So it's the end of the year, and a lot of people are doing their best and worst movies of the year list. I literally just did my worst movies I saw this year. And I've noticed a lot of people, they like to start off with the best movies of the year, and then they end the year with a whole bunch of negativity and like, yeah, these were the worst movies of the year, and yeah, this last year sucked. I mean, and so I'm doing it a little bit differently. I start off with the worst movies of the year, and then I want to end the year a little bit on a positive note, and so I'm ending it with my best movies I saw in 2023. And while I didn't say this with the worst movies of 2023 video that I did, I think it should be given that the movies I name on this list, or I named on that list, are not indicative of I saw every movie this year. Like, my worst movies of 2023, I didn't have on that list Ant-Man Quantumanium or The Marvels, because I didn't see either of those films. So I couldn't claim that they were good nor bad. And so just keep that in mind with this list as well, that if there's a movie that you were expecting to see on this list that you don't, it could just be that I did not see said movie. And so, yeah, this is the list of what I thought were the best movies of 2023. And I think number one may surprise you. So let's get into it. Okay, so before we begin with my 11 best movies I saw this year, I want to go over the honorable mentions. Usually a lot of people save those for right before number one. I like to get those out of the way first, because I always find that obnoxious as hell when you get to 2, you hear what 2 is, and then here are the honorable mentions. It's like, okay, well, I want to know what number 1 is. I'm getting rid of the honorable mentions first. And instead of it being 3, there's actually 4, because the first honorable mention I want to point out is The Continental. This technically is not a movie, it is a miniseries, and so that automatically disqualifies it from being one of the best movies I saw this year. However, it's only 3 episodes. Each episode is an hour and a half, so it's like 3 movies. And for a spin-off TV show about the John Wick franchise, it is really, really freaking good. And I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed it. The few criticisms I had with the show were barely enough for me to say, yeah, that's going to hurt the show. No, none of the criticisms I had hurt the show. I enjoyed all the characters. I enjoyed the quick pacing, the movie-like structure with each of the 3 episodes. And for the most part, it's a fantastic miniseries. You should absolutely check it out. The next honorable mention I have is one I'm not going to really get into, because I am going to do a review on this next. I want to do it before this video, but we're so close to the end of the year, I didn't want to do what happened last year where I released this video the day after the new year. I want to release this video before the new year happens. So because of that, I'm going to be doing this movie review later, so this will kind of give you an idea of what it will be. But the next honorable mention is Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. Now, this movie's been getting lambasted and completely shredded by critics all online. And part of me kind of agrees with some of the complaints. In my mind, this is not a perfect movie. Not by a long shot. But I feel that some of the criticisms are not so much that, yeah, they screwed up here. It's just, yeah, maybe the director's cut will fix some of this that we're supposedly getting next year. I'll get more into my pros and cons of this film with my review after this video, so look out for that review coming soon. But just note that I'm kind of nut for space opera, especially gritty space opera stories, and so I already am kind of giving this a few extra points than a lot of people are already giving it. But if you're looking for a fun sci-fi adventure, there's a lot worse movies out there, and I had fun with this. And yeah, I'll be looking forward to doing my review where I go over my pros and my serious cons with this flawed movie. And then the next honorable mention is Cocaine Bear. Yes, it's a ridiculous premise. They took a lot of liberties with the true story that this was very, 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 very loosely based on. But damn it, did I have fun with this movie. Once you finally got to the damn bear, and it takes a while to get to the damn bear, mind you, but once you get to the damn bear, it's a very fun movie. I had a lot of fun with it, and I found it funny that Elizabeth Banks thought, if this movie fails, my career is over. And it's like, no, this is actually the one movie you directed that was a success, because you decided to make something that everyone would have been interested in seeing. Like, oh, a bear on cocaine. Sounds fun. Let's go watch it. And so, yeah, I had fun with Cocaine Bear. And is it a stupid movie? Yes. But is it an entertaining stupid movie? Yes. And so, yeah, definitely check it out. And then the last honorable mention is actually a twofer. And it's going to sound weird at first, but just trust me when I tell you. The last honorable mention is Silent Night and No One Will Save You. And yes, these two movies have like almost nothing in common. One is a violent revenge thriller. The other one is an alien invasion story. But the reason why I lumped them in together is because there are two movies that came out this year that both tried something kind of interesting, if not completely worked. And that is, both these movies have like absolutely no dialogue of any kind. Each one has like one line spoken in this film. And that's it. And Silent Night, it's kind of interesting because you do hear like news reports going on in the background and, you know, like background traffic, but you never hear any of the main characters say a damn thing. And then with No One Will Save You, you hear absolutely no one say anything whatsoever in these movies. Now, these movies are completely different, but I respect what they were trying to do with these films. It's a clever, bold idea, having absolutely no dialogue and a story, yet trying to convey a story without dialogue. It's risky, it's bold, and does it work perfectly? No, but they were entertaining enough that I would recommend at least checking them out. The one great thing about these two movies is if you don't speak English, you don't need to worry about subtitles. If you don't speak Spanish or Russian, like, these movies are very accessible to multiple languages without any dubbing or subtitles. And so that's kind of cool. Not to mention that Silent Night does have a one-shot action take. I know people think those are gimmicks. I absolutely love them. And No One Will Save You, the thing I love about that is it gives me a decent horror flick with lanky gray aliens that I don't normally get. There's not a lot of straight up scary horror movies with gray aliens. There's a couple of like shorts out there and a couple of comedies, but a truly interesting straight up horror movie, it's kind of rare. And so No One Will Save You kind of scratched that itch. I had fun with it. Ending was a little cryptic. Silent Night, a lot more depressing than you would think it would be from the trailers. So just kind of keep those two things in mind. And now let's get on to my list of the 11 best movies I saw in 2023. And at number 11 is The Last Voyage of the Demeter, if I'm pronouncing that right. This was a movie that when I saw the trailer for, I was like, sold. Like, absolutely, I want to see this movie because there was this Netflix miniseries that came out about Dracula that for me sucked. It was terrible. Episode 1 wasn't that great. Episode 3 was complete dog shit. But episode 2 completely took place on the Demeter. And I absolutely loved that episode. It's like, okay, they have something going here. And then episode 3 just ruined it. But when I saw the trailer for The Last Voyage of Demeter, I was getting quick flashes of that great second episode to that Dracula miniseries. It's like, oh, okay, there is potential here. And absolutely, I want to see this. And when I saw the movie, when I finished the film, it's like, yeah, that was good. I mean, I wasn't nuts about it, but then thinking back, it's like, okay, all the acting was solid. I liked a lot of the character development. The visual effects were decent for the most part. I mean, a lot of it happened at night, so they were able to cover up spotty CGI. And, like, honestly, I couldn't really find any negatives about this movie. Even though when I finished it, it was like, yeah, it was okay. I mean, it wasn't fantastic, but it was decent. And so, that's why this is last on the list. Because it's not something that when I finish, it's like, oh my gosh, this was so amazing. But it's like, I can't really find anything wrong with this movie. I enjoyed it. Great pacing. And yeah, if you want a good, solid horror movie for the evening, check out Last Voyage of the Demeter. You'll probably have fun with it. So at number 10 is more of a guilty pleasure for me. I actually reviewed this movie. It's one of the few movies I was able to review on this list, simply because some of these movies I don't get to see till months later, and by that point, there's no point in reviewing it. Like 5 people are going to watch the review. But with this movie, it didn't get a lot of coverage, at least the coverage it deserved, and that's Hypnotic. Now, is Hypnotic a perfect film? No, it's not. But I liked what they were trying to do with it. It was incredibly well paced for a 90-minute movie. It was another Ben Affleck action flick, which I like his action flicks. And this was one of those times where I felt this would have served better as a 6-episode series, fleshed out a little bit more. But what I got from this, it was fun. It was a Robert Rodriguez film. And, you know, it's a fun, quick, little sci-fi mystery flick that is definitely worth your time. If you want a little bit more on my thoughts on it, you can check out the review I did for it. At number 9 is Godzilla Minus One. Now, a lot of people are having this a lot higher on the list, and the reason why this isn't high on my list is because there's a lot of other movies that just made me go, wow. And when I came out of the theater of Godzilla, it's like, yeah, I enjoyed that. I wasn't wowed, but I enjoyed Godzilla Minus One. I loved that they were able to get this movie made on such a small budget. I mean, absolutely incredible. Some of the best Japanese fictitious characters I've ever seen. Hands down. Some of the best acting from Japanese actors I have ever seen. Hands down. Probably my biggest criticism is I would have liked to have seen a little bit more Godzilla in this film. I know that's one of the most common criticisms that most cliche Godzilla fans have. And even though the characters were great in this, I would have liked to see a little bit more Godzilla than the 4 occasions we see him. I think it might have been 3 occasions. No, 4 occasions we see him in this 2-hour and 10-minute film. And so, is this a movie I'm going to buy? Absolutely. It's one of the better Godzilla films, which, you know, it's kind of hard to come by when you really look at it. But, you know, I grew up with Godzilla. I love Godzilla, and definitely, if you like Godzilla at all, and you're willing to watch it with subtitles, then yes, absolutely check this film out. I'm looking forward to seeing this in black and white. And, yeah, it's a solid Godzilla film. Now at number 8, and this one completely took me by surprise. I thought this movie was going to be so stupid, but it was stupid, but in a really fun, interesting way, and that is Totally Killer. So basically the premise of this is, what if you took Back to the Future and combined it with Scream? That's what you have with Totally Killer. Basically, this girl, she gets chased into her friend's time machine that she made in her garage with a box of scraps, and her friend is a teenager. And like, that's probably the most ridiculous thing about this movie, is that in this movie there is a teenage kid who built a time machine out of an arcade cabinet and a box of scraps. You have to really suspend disbelief to be able to follow that. But if you are able to suspend disbelief with that premise, then there is a really fun Back to the Future 5 slasher comedy in this mess of a movie, and I absolutely loved it. There's a lot of funny jokes at like how lax security was in the 1980s. The lead actress, I believe she played Sabrina, she does a really solid job. I liked some of the actors playing the younger selves of themselves as older characters that you get introduced in the beginning of the film. There's some funny moments, and like, honestly, this was a fun time for me. Is it stupid? Absolutely. Is it ridiculous? Absolutely. But I had a lot of fun with it, and it is on Amazon Prime, so if you already have Amazon Prime, you can go check that out for free. Well, technically not for free, but you can check it out with no additional cost. You understand what I mean. Let's go on to the next film. At number 7 is a completely unexpected one that I did not think was going to be this good. And that's Megan, or Mathregan. And yeah, it would have been funny if I had this at number 3, but I, in no good conscience, could have done that. There's a lot better movies than having this at number 3. But at number 7, definitely. So, Megan is from the trailers, a cliche horror movie about, oh, let's get an AI-controlled automated droid for our child. It sounds like such a cliche plot, and you can tell just from the premise, oh, that AI android machine is going to turn evil, isn't she? And you know what? You're right. The AI droid in this movie turns evil and, you know, starts killing people, okay? But that's not why this movie's at number 7 on my list of the best movies I saw this year. The reason why this movie is at number 7 is because when I went into this movie, I was expecting a mindless, turn my brain off, robot killer feature, okay? And as I'm watching the movie just decides to ask me a deep philosophical question. Like, I'm just... Wait, what? And then it asks me another about the morality of having our children connected to so many devices. I'm just like, what's happening? And this movie asks some really excellent questions. Like, I was just like, damn, that's a really good point. What movie am I watching? Because I was expecting a mindless slasher Chucky-like movie, and instead I was getting like a philosophy study hall of like, okay, so today, class, we are going to be discussing the ethics on should we allow our children to be connected to so many devices, and what would happen to our children in a futuristic world if those children are connected to only devices and have no human connection. What would that world be like? Why am I speaking with a slight British accent? I don't know, but it's... like, this movie surprised me. Is the acting good? Yes. Is the effects good? Yes. The child doll is surprisingly realistic and creepy looking at the same time, but it does have that, like, fusion of, yeah, I can realistically see people buy a AI droid like this. So they managed to keep that creepy factor, but not have it so overly creepy that it's like, dude, no one would ever buy this droid. And so, good work on the, like, effects department there. And I've yet to see the unrated version of this, which is exactly the same length as the theatrical. It's just bloodier. And so, I am interested in seeing that version. But no, kind of a surprise for me, this movie was. And so, yeah, definitely check out Mathregan, or Megan. At number 6 is a movie that I saw the trailer for, and the only reason why I watched this movie was because it was the same studio and stunt team that made John Wick. But, like, the trailer I wasn't entirely super excited for, and that is Sisu. Now, the reason why I wasn't excited for Sisu is because killing Nazis is like killing zombies. Unless you have a good gimmick or shtick with it, it's kind of been there, done that. It's kind of getting old. Same thing with zombies. You can't just have a straight up zombie movie anymore. You gotta have an interesting twist or gimmick with a zombie movie, because there's over 953 billion zombie movies out there. And the same thing is kind of happening with Nazi movies. It's like, okay, yeah, no, killing Nazis, good, yay, but it's getting a little boring. And so with Sisu, I was expecting kind of the same boring thing, but some fun action. And no, this was a very entertaining movie. So entertaining, in fact, that I grabbed it on 4K. And it's a fun movie, well-paced, incredibly well-paced. I absolutely love the main character. He's one of those characters that only say one line in the entire movie. And no, this is one of the few World War II movies where they actually do a good job making everything look dirty. The best one being Fury. I don't think you've seen that movie Fury, because surprisingly a lot of people have not seen Fury, but I'm getting off the subject. No, Sisu was a lot of fun, some really fun creative action scenes, definitely had a flair of Quentin Tarantino, and yeah, it's done by the same like studio that did John Wick, and they had the same like stunt guys do this apparently. Completely finished movie, but with English speaking roles, which is weird. Like, it's an entire Finnish cast, but yet everyone was speaking English. So I guess that was for us Americans' sake. But also interesting to find out that, like, when watching this movie, it's like, okay, real quick, why were the Germans in Finland? And it's like, oh, wow. And apparently I didn't know this, and the movie didn't explain this. Finland was actually on the side of Germany until they decided to surrender to, like, Russia, and they signed an agreement that, like, okay, we will kick out all the Germans in Finland. I think it's Finland and not Norway. I could be really mistaken about that. I will put the correct country name here, just in case I got that wrong. But yeah, no, I had fun with Sisu. Fun action movie for the evening. Make some popcorn. Absolutely entertaining film. Now, at number 5 is kind of a rough movie. And that is The Sound of Freedom. Now, when I say rough movie, I don't mean like, wow, the filming was rough. No. When I say rough, I mean the subject matter is really, really rough. But this is kind of a movie that, like, needed to be made, because looking into this movie, yeah, it's not a QAnon conspiracy theory. Like, a lot of this shit really did happen, and a lot of this shit really is going on as we speak. And I can't get into the details of it because YouTube is a little sensitive on certain people talking about certain subjects, and certain people allowed to be talking about certain subjects and whatnot and so forth. So just know that, yes, Sound of Freedom deals with terrible things being done to children worldwide. Okay, that's kind of the general premise about this one guy who decides to give up his government position that he only needed to stay in for like another couple of months to get his pension, to go try and save kids around the world. And people have like called it, oh, this is just, you know, white male, you know, Dream Fuhrer. Yeah, no, that's not what this is. This is actually a solid biopic, and like some of the characters they introduced, like there's this one Hispanic character named El Vampiro, and like it's like, okay, that guy's made up. It's like, no, holy shit, that guy's actually real. And so like this isn't a movie where it's just only the white guys are paying as good guys. No, this is a movie showing there are evil pieces of shit in the world, and they do shitty things like this. And there are people trying to stop them. And oddly, there are people trying to stop this movie from being shown. Interesting. But no, Sound of Freedom, really solid movie. And the other amazing thing about this movie is that it's PG-13. Like, this is a movie you can have a 13-year-old watch because there's nothing horrifically graphic in this movie, but also because the actors, when making this movie, it's like, we don't need to depict this on screen. We can just talk about it, and it'll be just as equally horrifying as if we were to depict it. And I appreciate that about this film. It's like, thank you. Thank you for not showing me you doing that. Okay, and that being burned into my mind, because there's literally a scene where they just show a person's reaction as they are watching these snuff films, and you just see them like silently start crying. It's like, yeah, if I had watched that for 3 hours a day to try and figure out who the victims were, that would emotionally scar me. And so, no, this was a very, very excellent film. But it's also a very disturbing film as well. And definitely don't have this the last thing you watch at night. But it's definitely a must-watch this year. From this year. You're probably not going to be watching this video until 2024. But absolutely, if you haven't seen The Sound of Freedom, I would highly recommend you check out The Sound of Freedom just to be more informed. At number 4 is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. Now, I also did a review on this, and I did have some criticisms of this film. Like, I felt it was more of a James Bond film than it was a Mission Impossible film. But even with that, this was still an insanely entertaining, enjoyable film. I mean, all the stunt work, all the set pieces, they spared no expense. And unfortunately, this is technically a financial disappointment because they had to stop for reshoots so many times because of COVID. And they had to stop production, and they had to move production. And, I mean, it was such a nightmare making this film that, yeah, when you hear they lost money on this movie, it's not a surprise. In fact, I'm amazed they didn't lose more money on this. But I absolutely enjoyed this film. It's another fantastic chapter in a franchise that doesn't have a bad chapter. It has some lesser chapters than others, but like even the weakest movie in this franchise, in my mind, which is Mission Impossible 2, is still entertaining as all hell. And so, yeah, absolutely. This is hell of a watch. The bike motocross base jump scene is just as entertaining as it was when you saw in the trailer. There's some really great moments. The train sequence is entertaining. I love all of the huge action sequences, and this was a really fun action movie from Tom Cruise. And so, yeah, that's about it. At number 3 is one of the best movies I saw this year, and I also did a review for this, John Wick Chapter 4. And yeah, fair warning, this is an exhausting movie because it is 3 hours of just... Actually, you know what? I got the exact time here because I bought it on 4K Blu-ray. This movie is exactly 169 minutes. So it kicks the hell out of 3 hours. And so, like, I would say about to 30 minutes of this film is actually just dialogue and talking, and the rest of the film is just action sequence after action sequence after action sequence after action sequence. And it is exhausting, okay? As an action fan, it is exhausting, okay? Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is not as exhausting as this film, and that too is almost a 3-hour movie. But with this movie, it is some of the most high-octane action set pieces you can imagine, all masterfully crafted. It's a movie that has one of the most realistic female fight scenes against a guy I have ever seen. Props there from a first-time singer turned actress. I'm going to slaughter her name, Rina Sarawande. I'm sorry for slaughtering your name, but like, she's a musician, and this is like the first movie she's in, and like, she does an awesome job in this movie. Her fight scene against a guy much bigger than her is very believable. It's just like, oh, so that's how a fight would actually look between a professional 90-pound woman against a professional 200-pound guy. And I really appreciated that. But no, like, some really awesome references to the Warriors, absolutely stellar action sequences, some creative camera angles and tricks, and like, just also a really fun conclusion. And I'm looking forward to seeing where else the series goes next. This was a lot of fun, and definitely one of those fun, like, trilogies or quadrilogies that never had a bad chapter. Okay, it's rare when you have a film series like Mission Impossible or John Wick, you don't have a bad chapter. You could say that about the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, but some people would say The Hobbits count, and some of those were bad chapters. And so it's rare when you get a film series that actually pulls off not having a bad chapter. Used to be able to say that about the MCU. Now, at number 2 is Extraction 2. And no, I did not intentionally put that at number 2 because it has 2 in the title. But when I saw the first Extraction movie, I had a lot of fun with it because it was such a surprise. I was just expecting, okay, Netflix action movie, Chris Hemsworth, okay, let's see if he can do an action movie. Little did I know that a professional stuntman and stunt coordinator was doing his first time directing and decided to do one of the most entertaining one-shot sequences out of all the impressive one-shot sequences I had seen before. The movie was mind-blowing to me. And, like, after seeing that movie, it's just like, who directed this? Sam Hargrave. Okay, I want to see anything else Sam Hargrave does. And this was his next movie, Extraction 2. And going into Extraction 2 is like, okay, I have questions because Extraction 1 kind of ends on a somewhat cliffhanger. And Extraction 2, it's what you would expect. It's more action goodness. It's a little bit more of an evolution of the character Rake. And ultimately, that's exactly what I wanted. And like, I absolutely love, if I can find it, I will show you, but I love this shot of him watching the football game while holding his pet chickens. Like, this was a point in the movie where I thought, I wonder if he's actually dead and this is just his heaven. You know, like, his heaven is watching the Sunday rugby match while holding his pet chickens. Like, you know, maybe his heaven is like a Tim Pool type heaven. I don't know. But, like, the action scenes in this film are so magnificently done. There is a 20-minute one-shot sequence that begins in a prison and ends on a train. And it doesn't start in a prison that has a train in it. Nuh-uh. It starts in a prison, moves to a car chase, and then goes onto a train. All 3 very well-crafted sequences, all one shot. Now, some people may go, well, technically they probably did some cuts here and there, so it wouldn't actually be a one-shot. You know what I mean. It's made to look like one shot, and holy hell, it's some of the best action I have ever experienced. I mean, it is just brutal and over the top, and like, just, you know, these characters are in scenarios you would never want to experience, even if you were a badass. It's just like, oh my gosh, they're in such a bad place right now. But man, is it incredible action. And like, this is a perfect example of a perfect video game adaptation that has been done. And that video game adaptation is Call of Duty. Like, if someone says, yeah, they're talking about making a Call of Duty movie, I would go like, no. They already made a Call of Duty movie. It's called Extraction 2, and Chris Hemsworth plays Captain Price, okay? Like, it's the perfect Call of Duty movie ever made. And it's not called Call of Duty. It's literally Call of Duty in but name only. And so, I mean, like, just absolutely all of the fight sequences and the locations, it's like you show that to a Call of Duty player, it's like, yeah, no, that's Call of Duty. And again, like John Wick Chapter 4, this is another movie that came out this year that showed a convincing, realistic fight sequence with a 90-pound woman against a 200-pound guy. And obviously, when you have stunt coordinators making the film, it's like, yeah, they're going to make sure that the 90-pound woman looks like she can actually fight. And they're going to make sure that the fight scene actually looks good. They're not going to do this choppy, half-ass MCU quick cut to try and hide that the actress can't actually fight. And, like, watching this movie, it's like, damn, she is such a fucking badass. And great character as well. It's one of those, like, really awesome, rare, true strong female characters that aren't a walking cliche but are actually really likable, and it's something that guys actually would want to see again. And if they do an Extraction 3, I really hope that they get her and Chris Hemsworth back together, because I mean, they're a winning duo. And now we are down to number 1, and this movie surprised me. Because, one, when I heard about this movie, I was like, okay, I'll try it. I was not expecting a lot out of this movie. And when I saw the movie, it's like, okay, that's kind of at my number 1. I expected all these films that I named before this to surpass this. Like, I expected Last Voyage of Demeter to surpass this, Godzilla Minus 1, Sound of Freedom, Mission Impossible, John Wick, Extraction 2, and yet none of them surpass this film. I'm sorry I'm milking it, but I have to, because it's still surprising to me that this is my number 1 movie of the year. And that is Tetris. Before you leave, let me explain. You may be thinking, oh, well, this guy's a gamer. Of course he's going to think a video game movie's the best movie of the year. Nuh-uh. I am not a Tetris fan. I've played it like 4 times in my entire life from the age of 8. Okay, I've almost rarely ever played Tetris. I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not enamored with it. And when I heard that this movie was coming out and I saw a trailer for it, it's like, I don't expect this to be that good. Okay, but, you know, it's Friday night. I got nothing better to do. I'll try it. And I tried this movie and I was just like, damn, that was an absolutely fantastic film. Oh my gosh, this movie was so fascinating. Absolutely. I mean, not only does this movie show you the origins of Tetris, but it also shows you like the origins of the Game Boy and shows you the inner workings of how Nintendo and other game companies in the 80s were working and how cutthroat some of these game companies were back in the 80s and how like it was almost kind of the Wild West of electronics and how the KGB got involved and how like there's literally a scene in the movie where it's like, yeah, no, you're not getting this. And it's just like, I know that they get it, but it's like, it just feels so hopeless. It's like, there's absolutely no way you're going to make this work. And yeah, I keep reminding myself, no, they actually got it. So how does this work? And like, I was so invested with this movie that I kept thinking about it weeks after seeing it. Everyone does a fantastic job. The kid from Kingsman, gosh, what's his name? Taron Egerton. Sorry, I keep forgetting that kid's name. He does a marvelous job in this film. I would say it's one of his best acting performances because he usually plays, you know, a guy who can kick someone's ass. He does a really convincing job playing a guy who's a pencil pusher. He does not look like a guy who can kick someone's ass. He does not look like a guy who could survive the KGB. He looks like a geek in this movie, and he does a wonderful job playing a hopeless romantic geek. I know I said hopeless romantic. His character kind of feels like a hopeless romantic. I love the character relationship with his wife, and I love the relationship he has with the original inventor of Tetris, and I love the entire interaction with him and the guys at Nintendo, and how like they're saying how like the bickering and infighting that happened. Like, this movie just completely took me by surprise, and I'm surprised that my number one pick of the year is not an action movie. I would have thought an action movie would have been my favorite movie of this year, but no. Going down to it, matching these films up, it's like, okay, was Mission Impossible better than John Wick? No, I like John Wick better than Mission Impossible. And when I got to Tetris and Extraction, it's like, Tetris was a far superior movie than Extraction. And so, yeah, Tetris was my favorite film of this year. I absolutely love this movie, and if it ever gets a physical release, I am buying it because they just did a magnificent job making this film. And I was expecting absolutely nothing out of this film. And so, yeah, those have been my 11 best movies I saw this year. Now, are there a couple of movies I've yet to see in the year that I do want to see? Yes. I do eventually want to see Aquaman 2. I do want to see Killers of the Flower Moon. And I do want to see, you know, The Iron Claw. And look, if I see those movies and they surpass Tetris in Best Movie of the Year, then I will do a review and point that out in the review. Like, yeah, this was better than Tetris. But as it is, right now, at time of this recording, the best movie I saw this year was Tetris. And I'm still dumbfounded that that's actually my favorite movie of the year. I mean, I just enjoyed that so much. And so, yeah, those have been my 11 best movies that I saw in 2023. My name's Christopher Connell with 11 Hour Views. And don't forget that my Rebel Moon Part 1 review is coming soon. And that will be all for today.